Hi, this is Debbie from Organic Oasis in Northern California, Zone 9B. Today, I'm going to make kale chips. A few days ago, I made a video. It was a recipe, a pretty delicious recipe with beets. It was a beet stew. And I harvested kale, and I showed you my kale plant and how I had to cut all the leaves off because it was bolting. And I just put all of my kale, I used my hands to tear it off the stalks, tore it into pieces, washed it, spun it dry in my salad spinner, and I just put it in these little snapware containers and left them in the refrigerator with a napkin on the bottom to absorb any extra moisture because I wanted it to stay crisp and not wilt. And so I have 3 of these containers, and I want to use them before they do wilt and start to go bad. So today, let's make kale chips. I'm going to pour my kale into this bowl, and I already have my oven heating up to 300, and I actually did put my oven on a convection bake. I have a convection bake option on my oven. If you don't, that's fine. I put it on 300 degrees, and I'm just going to massage the kale. I have 2 of these bowls and 2 of these containers, not bowls, but containers, snapware I bought from Costco. And I just harvested the kale, cut the kale, or tore the kale with my hands off the stalk, tore them into little pieces, washed it really well, spun it dry, and put it in the refrigerator, airtight with the paper towel. And as you can see, it's still nice and crisp. And it has been in the refrigerator for probably 3, maybe even 4 days. So it kept it nice. Now it's perfectly ready to make kale chips. So this recipe, I don't really have any measurements. It's going to be just sort of learning how much to use. The first time I made these, I did follow a recipe. I put the olive oil on, and then I put the teaspoon of salt, made the recipe, and the chips were way too salty. So I've been reading a lot of different recipes and finding that, what happens is if you just mix everything in here, following an ingredient, they may have less or more kale. The kale shrinks as it's cooking and the salt doesn't. And so you get things oversalted. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to drizzle olive oil on here. And now with my hands, I'm just going to start massaging the kale. And you should be able to feel when all of the kale is covered in oil. We want all the kale to be covered in oil. We don't want too much oil. Oh, my oven's heated up. We don't want too much oil because we don't want the kale to actually steam. We want the kale chips to come out crispy, like a potato chip. So I'm just going to be I'm just taking my hands and just kind of like rubbing the kale. And I can already feel that just that little amount of oil is getting all over the kale chips. So, okay. Once you feel that your kale is pretty much, you can see my hand, so there's plenty of oil on here. I don't need any more oil. So some of the recipes I read, some people used a little lemon juice. So now I'm going to just take a little bit of lemon juice. Again, we don't want too much. We don't want to steam it. We want it to get crispy. I'm just using this Santa Cruz organic. I'm going to massage a little bit more just to get some lemon juice flavor in here. I'm also going to take my Kirkland garlic, and I'm just going to put in maybe this much, like a half a teaspoon. It's like a heaping teaspoon. So the first batch of kale chips I made, I just used olive oil and salt. And like I said, they came out delicious, but they were too salty. You know how that is when you make popcorn and you oversalt popcorn and it actually ruins the whole thing? Well, that's what I did with my kale. So I'm not going to salt the kale now until it's actually in the pans. Okay. So now I have my quarter sheet pan and my Amazon basic silicone mat. And I'm just going to go ahead and take the cabbage, the kale, and just put it here. You want it to be spaced apart. You don't want it like piled on top of each other. You just want it to be kind of spread out here. I have 2 of these, so I'm going to go ahead and get the other one. Okay, and I'll just sprinkle this on. You might hear my dog drinking water in the back. She's 14 and has Cushing's disease. She drinks a lot of water. Okay, here we go. So we just keep putting this on. Now, my oven is heated to 300, like I said, with a convection setting. And this should cook for about 20 minutes. You don't want the kale to get black or burned or charred because that can make it taste a little bitter. So you do not want to do that. So you want to check it. And what I'm going to do, last time I cooked it, mine was ready in 15 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and check mine after 15 minutes. Now what we want to do is now I'm going to sprinkle the salt on. I'm just using a fine sea salt. You could use, there are people that used onion salt, garlic salt. Some people put on paprika, cayenne pepper, chili powder, cumin, all sorts of different spices. I'm keeping this basic. I already added lemon, garlic flavor, and now I'm just going to put on the salt. Like I said, I put on way too much salt last time and pretty much ruined it. I don't like a lot of salt. So I'm going to be very sparingly, just sparingly sprinkle it on now. It should stick to the oil. Last time I put it on when it was in the bowl, I put an entire teaspoon, mixed it up, and then that was it. I couldn't get the salt off of it after that. So it kind of ruined it. We did end up eating it all, but I felt like I just was, the feeling when you eat too much salt. It's like salty things. It makes you thirsty, and I just don't like it. So as you can see, I'm just taking a little bit of salt and just sprinkling it evenly over. Probably, if I was to guess, I'm not even using, on these 2 trays, I probably am only using maybe a little bit over a 1/4 teaspoon of salt on the entire thing. And last time the recipe called for a teaspoon, so that was way too much salt. So now that I can actually see the salt and it looks nicely evenly over here, I'm going to pop these in the oven. I will check them after 15 minutes and I will come back with you and show you how they look when they're done. The kale just came out of the oven and it was in a 300-degree oven that I had on the convection setting. I have 2 settings, pure convection and convection bake. So I had it on the convection bake setting and it went for 17 minutes and I decided it was done. But I had read about other people turning off the oven and just letting it sit in the hot oven for a few minutes to crisp up even more. So that's what I did. So I set my timer for 20 minutes. At 17 minutes, I turned off the oven and left it sitting for 3 more minutes. And when the 20-minute timer went off, I took it out. So as you can see, here it is. And I want you to hear this, if you can hear it. I am now chewing it. You can see it's really crisp. And this is what it looks like when it's done. So the kale is done and it is absolutely delicious. It is perfect this time. I did not put too much salt on. Please follow these instructions and do not oversalt your kale chips. Other recipes, like I said, they have you mixing all of the kale and the oils and whatever spices you're putting in plus the salt in the bowl before you spread it out on your sheets. Not a good idea. Go ahead and do it, but leave the salt out. And then at the end, just sprinkle a little bit of salt on. These, for whatever reason, the salt flavor really predominates on these kale chips. So you saw how much salt I put on. I just sprinkled barely, probably not even a 1/4 teaspoon. And even now, the salt is perfect. These are so delicious, and they're healthy. These ones are perfectly salted. They're like a very lightly salted potato chip. The lemon doesn't really stand out on a few of the chips I ate. A little, I could taste a little bit of the lemon. I could definitely taste the garlic and the oil. And just like I said, the salt is just perfect. These are so healthy. They're just kale, basically. You can eat the whole 2 pans though in like 10 minutes. So be prepared. Your kale will be gone literally probably within an hour after you make it. It's so crunchy and so good. Try kale chips. Try growing kale. As you can see, if you watch a prior video that I made, I showed how I grew 2 gigantic kale plants in a 7-gallon bag. I basically planted them back last October, and they're still going strong, but one of them started to bolt. So I did cut off all the kale, and it doesn't make tons. I put my kale in smoothies, I cook it, I do all types of things with it, but it only made 2 of these trays. Pulling all the kale off, it made 2 trays of chips. So it's a good way to use up, the chips are a good way to use up the kale if you have a lot of it and you want to use it up. I completely cleared all the stalks off and just all the leaves off and left just 1 stalk. I'm going to see if I can keep it living it's supposed to be a plant that can live for 2 years. So I'm kind of doing a test on that, an experiment. But there was another kale plant behind it that's still going strong, and I'll probably be doing the same thing, taking all the leaves off in the next week or 2 since we're getting warm weather. Probably make more kale chips and smoothies and then see what happens. I may have to wait until next fall to get more delicious kale. There's so many different types of kale. So this is a curly leaf kale. There's smooth leaf kales. There's lots of different kinds of kales. Some kinds, different color kales. Some kales are better in salads and used as baby leaves. This kale, you could see the leaves grow big, and they're huge, and then you pull off the smaller pieces. This is great for smoothies and cooking and stuff like that. But experiment with growing kale. It's normally growing in the fall through the winter and then harvesting it at the end of winter, early spring, depending on what zone you're in. But here in California, we definitely got a good 5 months production out of the plants. Thank you for watching. Stick with Tomato Tim and me and our Organic Oasis channel and find and learn more delicious recipes that you can make from your homegrown vegetables and fruits. Thanks for watching.